Welcome, everyone. You know, if you've ever found yourself totally dissatisfied with the standard, surface-level definitions we usually get for historical texts, well, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we are stripping away centuries of stained glass, we're cutting through all the ecclesiastical myth, and we are conducting a rigorous structural audit of a massive first-century mandate. Okay, let's dive into this. We aren't looking at later medieval traditions here. No, we are executing a strict, evidence-first exegesis of the primary data to uncover a reality that is, quite frankly, far more radical than you might think.
Here is the syllabus for our explainer today. We'll start with the lexical origin, move into the legal proxy, examine two distinct jurisdictions, map out the colonization cycle, define the true apostolic badge, and finally, we'll wrap up with reclaiming the nations. All right, Section 1, the lexical origin. This is where we look at the fusing of classical Greek strategy with Hebrew jurisprudence.
To truly understand what the ancient writers were talking about, we have to look way beyond our modern English translations. We actually need to examine a fascinating collision, a collision between Greek maritime terminology and ancient Hebrew legal frameworks. Let's start right at the root with the Greek word apostolos. Now, if you go back and read classical Greek literature, like the writings of Herodotus, for example, you'll quickly realize that this term lacked any religious meaning whatsoever. None. It was predominantly a shipyard asset. It was a naval and commercial term that denoted a specialized cargo ship or a fleet sent overseas to plant a colony. Think of it like a massive corporate expansion, right? The person leading this expedition wasn't a religious cleric. They were a highly strategic operative responsible for transporting the laws, the culture, and the foundational identity of their mother city into a brand new, often hostile physical location. The first-century writers basically drafted this Greek maritime word to serve as a container for an entirely different existing legal institution.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how that Greek term was grafted directly onto a highly developed Semitic legal reality known as the Sharia. By anchoring the Greek text in its Hebrew legal background, all the structural clarity suddenly clicks into place. You see, the writers chose apostolos because it was the absolute best linguistic vehicle to communicate the absolute, binding authority of the Sharia. And a Sharia was a legal proxy holding what we call plenipotentiary power. In everyday terms, this means they held the ultimate power of attorney. They didn't just carry a message, they carried the literal legal authority of the one who sent them. It was as if the sender themselves had physically walked into the room.
Moving on to Section 2, the legal proxy. Let's break down the strict mechanics of first-century Shlachut law. We're going to take a deep dive into the actual constitutional law of the first-century church right now. Because apostles were absolutely not merely messengers delivering a letter. They were legal extensions of the sender's own persona. To really wrap our heads around this, we must look at the primary legal maxim from first-century Jewish civil law. According to Mishnah Barakat 5:5, the law states explicitly, a man's agent is equivalent to the man himself. Under this rigorous legal framework, known as shlikut, the proxy holds a literal power of attorney. They have the absolute recognized authority to sign contracts, bind agreements, and execute judgments. But here is the catch, and it's a big one. This massive authority is entirely dependent upon the specific mandate given by the sender. Once the task is completed, or if they step even an inch outside those assigned boundaries, their proxy status instantly terminates. They are pipelines of authority, guys, not the source of it.
Therefore, before we go any further, it is absolutely crucial to systematically deconstruct what an apostle is not, because we carry a lot of historical baggage on this word. First, they are not independent legislators. They do not invent doctrine on a whim. According to the text in John 16:13 and 14, their legal authority to bind and loose was strictly passive. What does that mean? It means they were only authorized to declare what had already been legally established in heaven. They weren't making it up as they went. Second, they are not uniquely validated by miracles. Performing signs and wonders did not define the office. According to the book of Acts, specifically chapter 6 and 8, deacons and ordinary disciples like Stephen and Philip were routinely performing massive, undeniable miracles. Miracles were common, they weren't the defining apostolic badge. And third, they are not top-down bureaucratic corporate tyrants. As we'll see in a few minutes, their immense authority was paradoxically wielded through a posture of extreme subjection, not human superiority.
Section 3. Two distinct jurisdictions. They were equal in authority, but separate in scope and geography.
Okay, we need to address a very common misconception. A lot of people think there was some kind of hierarchical Tier I and Tier II system among the apostles, like the 12 were the bosses and everyone else was middle management. The historical data proves this is entirely false. Let's deliver an exhaustive contrast here. On one side, we have the 12.
Their legal charter was explicitly national and eschatological. They were a closed, cosmic court tasked with judging the 12 tribes of Israel. Their names were structurally locked into the foundation of the system. On the other side, we have the broader envoys, figures like Paul or Barnabas. Now, they held the exact same plenipotentiary power, but their mission was specific, task-oriented, and localized. Think of it like comparing the fixed, permanent justices of a Supreme Court to a specialized team of active, cross-cultural diplomats. They didn't hold a lesser volume of authority. They just had a completely different jurisdiction.
To prove why the 12 were a strictly closed group, we have to look at the non-negotiable legal criteria established by Peter. According to Acts 1:21-22, to hold a seat among the 12, a candidate required absolute historical contiguity. Peter says it clearly. They had to have accompanied the group continuously from the literal day of John's baptism all the way until the ascension, serving as an empirical eyewitness repository of Jesus' physical resurrection. This strict legal prerequisite structurally excluded later envoys. Take Paul, for instance. He was undeniably an apostle to the Gentiles, but he completely fails the specific requirement. He wasn't there at John's baptism, so legally he was excluded from that specific judicial seat over Israel held by the 12.
Let's move to Section 4 and see how this builds. The colonization cycle. The 4-step operational blueprint for franchise expansion.
This is where the Hebrew legal authority perfectly synergizes with that Greek maritime operational model we talked about earlier. Paul executed his mission exactly like a classical Greek colonization effort. Let's break down this brilliant colonial architecture step by step. In Phase 1, Paul did not just wander aimlessly through the desert. He strategically infiltrated high-density urban nodes, major Roman political and shipping hubs like Corinth, Ephesus, and Philippi. It's a brilliant tactical move. By securing the metropolitan core, the surrounding rural regions were organically colonized as information naturally radiated outward. Phase 2 involved physically planting the spiritual colony, known as the ecclesiae. This wasn't just a weekly meeting. It was an ideological outpost designed to function as a miniature working version of the kingdom of God, right in the middle of hostile pagan territory, a literal colony of heaven. Phase 3 is the stabilization residency. According to the textual data, this averaged roughly 3 years, like Paul's extensive stay in Ephesus. He didn't just preach a sermon and run to the next town. He rigorously trained the citizens to completely overwrite their old cultural biases with the laws of their new home country. It was a deep dive into objective doctrine and restructuring communal relationships. And finally, Phase 4, establish local governance and exit. Once local elders were officially ordained and the foundation was set, the apostles' mandate for that specific location was closed. They intentionally cut the cord of dependence and exited the region. They left the self-governing outpost to stand entirely on its own while they moved on to the next unreached frontier.
But, and this is a massive but, it is crucial to remember that they were not independent entrepreneurs plotting their own roadmaps. They didn't just look at a map and say, hey, Rome looks nice this time of year. According to Acts 16:6-7, Paul's perfectly logical human strategy to target prosperous regions like Asia and Bithynia was explicitly shut down. The text clearly states they were forbidden by the Holy Spirit, and the Spirit did not permit them. You see, they were strict strike force proxies operating under direct, sovereign dispatch. They only had authority exactly where the principal sent them, period.
Section 5. The true apostolic badge. Authority expressed through absolute dissent.
We are pivoting now to what I think is the most fascinating part of this explainer, the radically inverted power dynamic of this kingdom. How is this massive plenipotentiary authority actually wielded by these guys? Well, the answer is brilliantly hidden in the original grammar. According to Paul in 2 Corinthians 12:12, he writes, "The signs of an apostle were worked out among you in all perseverance, in signs and wonders and mighty deeds." Now, if we run a strict forensic scan on the original Greek here, there is a profound dative case shift. Grammatically, this means the miracles, the signs and wonders, were merely the accompanying circumstances. They were the background music, if you will. The primary subject, the actual definitive proof of his apostolic authenticity, was forged in all perseverance.
Paul expands on this incredibly inverted posture over in 1 Corinthians 4:9, stating that God has displayed us, the apostles, last of all. What he's doing here is utilizing a vivid historical metaphor of the Roman triumphal procession. In these massive, incredibly lavish imperial parades, the conquering general rode at the very front in absolute blinding glory. But at the absolute back of the parade walked the broken, exhausted captives who were destined to be thrown to the beasts in the arena. Paul looks at the structural positioning of an apostle and essentially says, we are at the very back of the line. The legal authority was absolute in definition, yes, but the lifestyle? The lifestyle was grueling hardship, foot-washing sacrifice, and acting as the literal least of all so that the newly planted colony could thrive.
So the crucial point is this specific Greek word, hupomene. It translates to supernatural endurance and unwavering fortitude through intense physical and emotional fracturing. This, my friends, is the true apostolic badge. A true proxy is not validated by personal flashiness, charismatic speaking skills, or a trail of spectacular miracles. Frankly, anyone can fake a spiritual show. No, they are legally validated by their enduring, unbreakable faithfulness to the sacrificial character of the sender, even while they are being completely physically broken.
Which brings us to a massive structural question. If these apostles are highly trained, legally empowered proxies, and if they are enduring unimaginable hardship to strategically plant these spiritual colonies all over the Roman world, what is the profound cosmic endgame here? Why go through all of this?
Section 6. Reclaiming the Nations. This is the Deuteronomy 32 worldview and the hostile takeover.
The conclusion of our explainer today reveals a grand, breathtaking, cosmic narrative. The apostles weren't just starting a new world religion, they were executing a vast legal reclamation project. To understand what exactly is being reclaimed, we have to look at the ancient cosmic division of the earth. According to the Dead Sea Scrolls baseline for Deuteronomy 32:8, it states, "When the Most High gave to the nations their inheritance, he fixed the borders of the peoples according to the number of the sons of God." What this text is outlining is the historical fracture at the Tower of Babel. Because of humanity's rebellion, Yahweh effectively disinherited the nations. He divided the globe and placed these nations under the administrative jurisdiction of lesser divine beings, these sons of God, or what the New Testament writers call principalities and powers. But according to the primary texts, these divine rulers corrupted their mandates. They went rogue. They enslaved humanity, creating a cosmic deadlock where dark powers legally occupied the globe.
But that deadlock is completely shattered by a specific royal coronation decree. According to Psalm 2:8, the Father speaks a legal decree directly to the Messiah stating, "Ask of me, and I will give you the nations for your inheritance, and the ends of the earth for your possession." The New Testament authors explicitly and repeatedly connect this specific decree to the resurrection. The resurrection was the literal coronation day where the Messiah was legally authorized by the Father to dismantle those old Babel territorial divisions. He was granted the absolute legal right to completely reclaim those disinherited nations from the corrupt spiritual powers. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how the spiritual colonization cycle systematically strips the old territorial spirits of their authority. Let's look at the contrast. Under the old Babel system, the globe was ruled by those lesser sons of God, and humans were completely trapped under their corrupt jurisdiction. The final objective there was just dark powers ruling the earth. But under the new system of the apostolic mission, the nations are being systematically reclaimed via these strategically planted spiritual outposts. Believers are legally adopted into the royal family, completely bypassing the old structures, and are actually elevated into becoming the true sons of God. The final objective is a complete cosmic replacement. The human assembly legally inherits the thrones of the fallen powers. This is exactly why the famous Great Commission in Matthew 28 is actually the tactical execution of the Psalm 2 coronation decree. According to the text, Jesus steps up and declares, "All authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all the nations." Listen to the legal weight of that. Jesus is claiming his legal cosmic monopoly. He officially cancels the Babel proxy lease, and he immediately dispatches his Shalia proxies to execute the hostile takeover. They are the legal strike force sent directly behind enemy lines to collect the king's newly awarded property.
So here we are. We have audited the ancient linguistics, the strict constitutional mechanics of the legal proxy, and the breathtaking cosmic architecture of this global colonization campaign. The original architects laid an unbreakable foundation, and they did it through their own grueling supernatural endurance. Which leaves us with one final, unavoidable question to close our explainer today. If the foundation is already laid, what part of the cosmic inheritance are you being called to reclaim today?